I'm the daughter of a wealthy family that just went bankrupt. To save the company, my dad married me off to the rising tech mogul, Tony. Nobody knew Tony was my ex-boyfriend, whom I dumped. On our wedding night, he looked at me coldly. Don't think I still like you. Marrying you is just a temporary fix. Once the acquisition is done, we're divorcing. Then something like a comments section appeared in my mind. Villains always talk tough but are soft inside. Girl, don't believe him. Trust me, he stares at your pics every night, craving you. Villain on the outside, don't think I like you. Inside, why isn't she comforting me? She's clueless. Just call him husband once, and he'll be putty, worshipping you. Watching Tony about to leave, I tried saying, husband? The man froze, his deep eyes fixed on me, as if he'd swallow me whole any second. What did you just call me? Tony's voice was husky, still cold, but not as distant as before. Knowing the advice worked, I softened my tone. Can you not go? It's thundering outside, I'm scared. I wasn't lying, I've feared thunder since my grandma died. Tony knows that. He looked at me for a long time. Just when I thought he'd walk out, he grabbed pajamas from the closet and went to the bathroom. Didn't he already shower? When did he become such a neat freak? The comments freaked out. Girl, it's not hygiene. The villain's on fire inside from your husband. If he doesn't cool off in there, he'll embarrass himself. No wonder, the villain hasn't touched a woman in years, only finding comfort in your clothes and photos. It's no shock he slipped. The villain's like that and still chants your name in the bathroom. These two are too much. You up there, you know, pure love is not what you think, right? I was stunned by the comments. Is this a comment board or some no man's land? Why do these black letters seem to turn yellow the more I read? I blushed and resisted the urge to eavesdrop at the bathroom door, changed into my pajamas, and lay in bed. An hour later, Tony came out of the bathroom. Just in pajama pants, no shirt. I hate to admit it, I haven't seen a better body than Tony's. He's like the benchmark for a lean build, radiating raw energy. Water droplets slid down his muscular chest and abs, disappearing into his V-line. I couldn't help but swallow a bit. Have you had enough? His voice gave nothing away. I quickly turned my head. Who's looking at you? Comments. If you weren't looking, he wouldn't be so upset. When you looked away, his brows knitted so tightly. Don't be afraid to keep looking and even touch. Wanna bet he'll need another shower? Of course, I wouldn't dare touch. I know how strong Tony is. Full of bull-like strength. Before I even reach him, he might just break my arm. The comments are just there to make things messy. The man hesitated for a while, grabbed a separate blanket, and lay down. It's a king-size bed, but we turned it into a battlefield divide. Won't sleep together now? But when she's gone, those photos will be all you have, crying all the time. Appreciate this chance while you can still see her. She's the most beautiful in the book. Soon, she'll be no more. Yep, from the comments, I know I'm about to die. This world seems like a tragedy romance novel. Tony is the villain, and I'm his first love, doomed to die early. The main character is his half-brother Daniel. Tony's mom committed suicide when Daniel's mom interfered. After that, Tony lived with his grandparents in poverty. That's why he always resented Daniel. The story hasn't gotten far, but their companies are already rivals. The true spark is my death. The day after I marry, I go abroad for work, where I meet Daniel's friends. They want to teach me a lesson for Daniel and hire some foreigners who end up violating and killing me, then tossing me into the sea. Tony goes mad and never stops until he and Daniel are at war. But how could the villain defeat the main lead? Tony ultimately dies where I was thrown into the sea. Knowing this, I quickly grabbed my phone and canceled my flight. Told my assistant to switch our meeting online, cancel if they refuse. Making money isn't worth more than my life. Comments. Wait, she's not going abroad? That's good. She shouldn't die that tragically. This villain rarely falls for the main lead. He's suffered enough, give him a break already. Still, he hurt the main leads. Why are there people defending him? Get your morals straight. Alright, you're so virtuous. Would you still love someone who takes everything away? Honestly, if I went through what the villain did, my resentment could feed 10 evil sorcerers. I was absorbed in the comments when I heard a rustle beside me, Tony turning and groaning softly. He has an old injury from a construction accident, it aches on rainy days. Thinking about him saving himself for me for years, and then dying by the sea with my ashes. I couldn't help but feel a lump in my throat as tears welled up. Tentatively, I reached into the man's covers, slowly feeling my way to his shoulder. Tony stiffened at my touch, but he didn't stop me. When my hand landed on his chest, he caught his breath and grabbed my hand, his voice hoarse. What are you doing? I bit my lip. Where's the ointment? I want to give you a massage. His grip tightened, his Adam's apple bobbling. I knew what he was thinking. Before we broke up, I'd always give him massages, which would usually lead to more. The thought made me warm all over. I quickly withdrew my hand and turned away from him. If you don't want to, then forget it. Let's just sleep. The chat was hilarious, teasing me for not pushing through, saying that Tony's rationality was hanging by a thread. But since I wasn't going out of the country, they said that thread was going to snap eventually. I couldn't look at the comments anymore, so I just closed my eyes and covered my head with the blanket. Maybe I was just worn out from the wedding, because I fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, I woke up feeling smothered. I opened my eyes to find my face pressed against Tony's firm chest. He had me wrapped in his arms, one big hand around my waist. When did I end up in his bed? I wriggled a bit, and he tightened his grip, pulling me closer into his chest. I tried to endure it, but couldn't. I finally wriggled free from his embrace and took a deep breath. How was his body so rock solid? It was like getting squished by a boulder. I went to the bathroom to freshen up, and noticed a clear bite mark on my neck in the mirror. Yep, that's from the villain, I muttered. Watching the villain bite the main character last night felt like watching a dog mark its territory. Thinking of the villain pulling his wife into his arms and sneaking a few kisses last night, I couldn't help but laugh. Tracing the mark he left, I chuckled softly. Wait, why was I even laughing? Did I actually enjoy getting bit by him? Gosh, they're both such weirdos now. I guess I'm destined to keep shipping them. I ignored the chat and went to the kitchen, eager to make breakfast. I hadn't noticed yesterday, but now I saw how bleak Tony's place was. Just black, white, and gray, and no help around because he hated people touching his stuff. The fridge was nearly empty. I grabbed some luncheon meat and mumbled to myself, I don't know how he's been living like this. What are you doing? His voice startled me, and in my panic, I nicked my finger with the knife. Ouch! Tony rushed over. What happened? I held up my finger pitifully. I was trying to make you breakfast, and now I'm bleeding. He stared at my cut, veins popping, fists clenching, before finally looking away. Go bandage it up. I'll make breakfast. I felt a little hurt. He used to fuss and even suck on my finger when this happened. Guess money changes people. What do you want to eat? He took the knife from me. Ham sandwich. His eyes flickered. Ham sandwiches used to be my favorite breakfast, especially the ones he made. He didn't say anything, just started slicing the ham. Without a shirt, with only an apron on, he was quite the sight. Geez, girl, control yourself. Can I just be in his place for one scene? Please. Out of nowhere, Tony told me to get out. My stare must have been intense, because he could feel it without even turning around. I pouted. Nothing to brag about. I've kissed every inch of you. I thought I just said that in my head, but boy, it slipped out aloud. Tony's ears turned a deep red. Amy. He hadn't even turned around when I bolted from the kitchen. No way, are they really this sweet? Meanwhile, in the other storyline, the main characters are fighting over a secretary. If this stays this cute, I'm ditching the other drama. OMG, just saw the villain eat the ham with the girl's blood on it. What a psycho. Not long after, Tony came out with 2 sandwiches. He was back to his cold self, not even glancing at me, probably afraid I'd say more ridiculous stuff. Not a word was exchanged during breakfast. Once Tony left for work, I got bored, so I called up the driver to buy some decorations. Laid out a cozy rug in the living room, hung up pretty curtains on the windows. Even changed the sheets in the bedroom to a cute floral pattern I liked. Looking at our newly adorned place, I couldn't help but sniffle. It was just like the future home Tony and I once dreamed of in our old apartment. I had plans to meet up with my bestie Candy for afternoon tea. Halfway through, a few familiar faces showed up. Isn't that Amy? It's been ages since I've seen her. Before we even said anything, they sat down, looking like they were ready to join us. I knew what they were up to. They just wanted to flaunt their superiority and mock me because my family went bankrupt. Even Winter was there, Daniel's fiancé, sitting quietly among them. Oh gosh, my memory is terrible. Amy got married yesterday, and I forgot to congratulate you. How's the newlywed life treating you? I just smiled and said nothing. Everyone knows Tony isn't fond of me. Seeing how I am now, they assumed I'm doing poorly and shamelessly started mocking me. You see, a woman needs to find a man who loves and cares for her. You can't rely solely on money because who knows how miserable it could get. Exactly. I heard Tony hasn't had a woman around him these years. Even when a manager tried to send a woman to his room, he kicked her out. People are wondering if he swings the other way. Winter was originally upset about fighting with Daniel. But after hearing my situation might be worse, she looked at me with a mix of sympathy and some mocking relief in her eyes. As if I'd let these people have a laugh at my expense. I immediately smirked, twisting the wedding ring on my hand. Who says my man doesn't treat me well? Last night, he was holding me so tight, even in his sleep. On the 5th run last night, he took me to the shower and said he'd been saving himself all these years just for me. He can't even glance at another woman without feeling guilty. I bought a few new outfits to show him tonight, but I guess you all wouldn't understand married fun like that. When I mentioned the 5th time, their mouths dropped open a bit. Even Candy tugged at my sleeve, gesturing behind me. I turned and saw Tony and some managers standing right behind us. I died on the spot from embarrassment. I had no idea how long they'd been there. Judging from the comments, they must have overheard our entire conversation. Villain, is this how you talk about me out here? Ha! This girl sure has guts, not treating us as strangers at all. The villain's mind is flooded with images of past times with the girl in that tiny apartment. If it weren't for all these people here, he'd have already taken her home for some quality time. She's in for it tonight when she gets home, won't be able to walk tomorrow. I stared blankly at Tony, still processing. While I was caught off guard, the other managers were already slapping themselves, apologizing to their wives and bowing to Tony. Worried about Tony embarrassing me, I quickly wrapped my arms around his, interlocking fingers with his. Honey, what are you doing here? Came to pick me up. Tony looked a bit puzzled, so I gave him a look, trying to pinch his waist. But damn it, his abs are rock solid, couldn't pinch at all. What's he keeping such a fit body for? And Tony's ears, when did they turn red? Grabbing my mischievous hand, he shivered slightly. Stop it. Did he misunderstand something? Eventually, Tony accepted the other manager's apologies and took my hand, leading us out. Once out of the cafe and sure no one was watching, I was about to gracefully withdraw my hand when I noticed Tony's grip tightening. Couldn't shake it off at all. I looked up, seeing his ears still red, with hints of flushing on his face. What an incorrigible guy. Outside, Tony's secretary, Ken, was waiting by the car door. He even smiled a bit at me. Seems like the rumors were true. Tony hasn't had another woman around, not even hiring a female secretary. I flashed a bright smile back at Ken. Turning around, I caught Tony's dark gaze. A second later, he let go of my hand and got into the car without a word. What did I do now to piss him off? Why is his mood so unpredictable, like I'm dealing with PMS? Inside the car, I glared at Tony. He pretended not to notice, discussing business with Ken. When Ken asked if they should head back to the office since there's a meeting in an hour, Tony hesitated. Everyone's been working hard, let's call it a day, rest up. Push the meeting to tomorrow. Almost immediately, Ken turned from his laptop, eyes wide at Tony. If it weren't for my good hearing, I'd have thought he said to lay everyone off. Even driver Mike shot a puzzled glance at Tony from the rearview mirror. What, don't want the time off? Tony's voice deepened. No, I'll let everyone know to go home now. Ken scrambled for his phone as if Tony might take back his words, his hands trembling slightly. He gave me a grateful look. Though I had no idea why he was thankful. I just smiled back. It's clear they worked hard for their quick success over the years. Turning back, I saw Tony frowning at me. I gave him a sweet smile, grabbing his hand resting beside us. Tony hesitated for a moment, staring at me with his lips tightening, and then looked away. But he didn't pull his hand from mine. Chat, OMG, I'm charmed by the villain and the girl. Why do their little moments feel sweet? The villain's been holding back the urge to kiss her, showing love isn't just passion, it's restraint. In comparison, that male lead next door, who only cares about his own pleasure and ignores the female lead's wishes, is like a superhero. Can't the writer just kill him off? Give us a good ending for the villain and the other female character. No way, the male lead's shield can't be ignored. No matter what, the villain ends up dead. Reading the last line gave me a start. I gripped Tony's hand tighter. I won't let anything happen to Tony. When we got home, as soon as Tony walked in, he noticed the place was newly decorated. He paused for a moment but didn't say anything, just went straight upstairs. I followed him upstairs. He didn't ask any questions, seeming content, and headed to the closet to change. When he came out, he was sitting on the bedroom sofa reading a magazine. I went to the vanity and started brushing my hair. What about the clothes? Came Tony's voice from behind. Confused, I asked, what? He paused before answering, didn't you say you bought a lot of little outfits to show me? Comments, so that's why the villain came home early. He couldn't wait to see the other female character in those outfits. I suspected something was up when the villain was sitting on the bedroom sofa. He even held the magazine upside down, glancing at the closet now and then. Can't hide a thing. Even if she didn't buy any, the villain has plenty of little outfits and toys in the room next door for them to play. I widened my eyes. Is Tony into this stuff now? Turning my head, Tony was already behind me and lifted me onto the vanity before I could speak. His hot body was pressed against me, his breath warm on my ear. I thought you'd just come out wearing them. You've always been good at seducing me, haven't you? Tony wasn't wrong. After all, I was the one who made the first move. Back then, Tony was the campus nerd and the aloof heartthrob, making many girls swoon for him. He also had the label of poor, adding a touch of brokenness beneath his cool appearance. Tony attended classes by day and worked at a cafe by night to earn money. I've seen no less than 20 women try to slip him hotel room keys, including some beautiful, affluent young ladies. I was one of them. Unlike the others, Tony always politely refused them, smiling. But with me, he was cold and distant, as if I handed him a scam call instead of a room key. Honestly, I didn't want anything to happen with Tony at first. I just thought if he accepted my card, it meant he wanted to be with me. Unfortunately, despite trying for 3 months, I never succeeded. Because of exams, I didn't visit the cafe for nearly a week. When I returned, I felt Tony's eyes on me. Expecting his usual aloofness, I was shocked when he took the card this time. His face went red, he coughed awkwardly. I declined before because it felt rushed. I wanted to wait until after graduation. I jumped up, what rush? I need you now, waiting till graduation is too long. Hearing this, Tony blushed more, his grip on the card tightened, nodding almost imperceptibly, saying he'd meet me at 8 p.m. I thanked him multiple times, holding his hand. When he arrived at the hotel, he found me with my calculus book at the study desk. Calculus was my weakest subject, and without Tony's help, I'd surely fail. I'll never forget Tony's face when he saw that. Looked like he was sucking on a lemon. In the romantic hotel room, Tony taught me calculus for 4 hours. Since we missed the dorm curfew, we had to stay overnight. Neither of us remembers whose idea it was, but we didn't waste the hotel room and spent the whole night together. We almost missed our exams the next afternoon. Remembering this, I met Tony's intense gaze and suddenly didn't care about anything else. I pulled down his tie and kissed him. Comments. Screaming loudly like a groundhog, finally, the villain and other female character kiss. Who knew she'd make the first move? So bold and amazing. The villain's muscles are about to burst out of his shirt. Imagining what she will experience next, my tears fall as I laugh. Girl, please, don't stop, the villain's losing his composure. My hand moved along Tony's throat as it moved with his swallow. His eyes narrowed, a breathy sigh escaped. Amy, do you know what you're doing? Of course, I'm seducing my husband, I replied lightly, making his breathing more erratic. The next second, Tony seized my neck and kissed me fiercely. His kiss wasn't like mine, it was deeper and more intense, like he wanted to envelop me entirely. At some point, Tony had tossed me onto the bed. As my hand moved from his abs to his belt, Tony caught it suddenly. 4 years ago, why did you break up with me? Was it my fault? His voice was husky and filled with long-held sorrow. Does the past matter? The result is we're together now, right? I admit saying this is a bit cruel, but I don't want Tony to know the real reason we broke up. He gave a self-mocking laugh. Guess it doesn't matter anymore. With that, Tony got up and headed to the bathroom. He hesitated for a moment when reaching for the gray pajama pants but switched to black ones. Comments. Why'd you stop? Villain, get back here. Stopping now, do you even count as a man? Author, I already took my pants off, and you're giving me this? The pure love couple suddenly becomes the pure hate couple? I know the villain's all about pure love, but I don't want to see that right now, get it? I know it's not the right time. But why did the villain change his gray pajama pants to black ones? Aren't they the same? Dude, just sit at the kiddie table. Some questions shouldn't be asked. After coming out of the bathroom, Tony went to the study and never came back all night. When I woke up the next day, he had already left for the office. I know Tony's avoiding me, and it makes me a little mad, like he should just avoid me forever. This week, I'm not saying another word to him. But not even 2 hours after I decided this, the comments started flooding in. Incoming. The villain is about to sign a contract with Daniel Group today. On the surface, the male lead is fighting the villain for this deal, but secretly he's teamed up with Daniel to take the villain down. Once the villain signs, it's the beginning of his company's downfall. Can the side chick go save the villain? I can't stand to watch him get destroyed step by step. In the end, I couldn't help myself. I packed up some lunch and headed to Tony's office. Ken found out I was there and immediately took me up to the CEO's office. Tony's expression was a bit unnatural when he saw me. Why are you here? I lifted the lunchbox in my hand. Brought you lunch. But my eyes landed on the contract in his hand. Tony nodded and didn't look at me again. I put the lunchbox on the table and slowly moved behind him. Sure enough, it was a deal with Daniel. I started massaging Tony's shoulders. I felt his body tense up for a second, then relax. I knew the timing was right, so I said softly, I don't think this deal with Daniel Group is a good idea. Tony paused. Why? I couldn't think of a reason, so I made one up. The CEO of Daniel doesn't have a good face. I don't like it. Looks unlucky, bound for bankruptcy in a few years. Tony, is this about Daniel? I was stunned. I didn't expect Tony to be so sharp. His voice turned cold. Do you like him? Is that why you want me to give him the deal? No way. I denied it immediately, wondering what on earth Tony was thinking. Meanwhile, the comments were going wild. I almost forgot, the side chick once went on a blind date with the male lead. Yeah, she probably forgot, but the villain was furious back then. I'm dying, they're not even talking about the same thing. She's focused on business, and he's got love on the brain. Tony really is the king of romance-obsessed villains in modern stories. Oh, that's right. Back then, I did go on a few dates to gain my dad's trust. I don't even remember what most of those guys looked like. Seeing I wasn't lying, Tony's face relaxed a bit. You should head back. I'll reconsider the deal. I wanted to push it further, but Ken escorted me out of the office. At the door, Ken quietly reassured me. He said Tony had been negotiating this deal for a while and wouldn't dismiss my opinion on purpose. But before the door closed completely, I overheard Tony telling Ken. Cancel this deal. In fact, don't work with Daniel at all. My wife says he has a bad face. Ken was speechless. The comments lit up with laughter. Yes, listen to the wife, keep her happy. The villain knows what matters. Ken, this couple's gonna drive me crazy, working all these late nights and losing hair. Guess you're young and full of energy. Following the advice from the comments, I found Daniel's spies in Tony's company one by one. But having learned from the first time, I didn't go straight to Tony. I used a roundabout approach. Like complimenting a colleague's good looks in front of Tony. The next day, that colleague got sent to manage the least important part of the African branch. Or I'd mention how another colleague was so focused while coding. Pretty soon, he got a fancy severance package. For a while, whenever people saw me, they started to worry, even Ken would take a detour. Scared I'd praise them too and they'd be shipped off somewhere. Initially, I had doubts. With Tony's capabilities, there shouldn't have been so many spies from Daniel. But later, I realized it wasn't about Tony's skills. It's just the protagonist's halo is too strong, always dumbing down the villain. Under my watchful eye, Daniel was running out of moves. Tony's company was doing better and better, overshadowing Daniel's. For a while, Daniel made no moves. Just when I thought he was giving up, the comments popped up again. Watch out, the male lead plans to accuse the villain of being an illegitimate child at the business summit. His dad will show up to back him up. The villain won't be able to clear his name. I don't get why so many people want to save the villain. Daniel is the male lead, I'll always back the male lead. Your male lead messed around not only with the female lead but also the canary who caused her miscarriage. Just disgusts me, I wish she'd throw him in jail. This was supposed to be a wife repentance story anyway. The male lead regrets later, spends a whole day and night kneeling in the rain, ended up hospitalized with a fever. Yeah, she only lost a baby. He caught a fever for her. Hope you find someone just like that male lead. If you don't feel like going, I can take Ken. Seeing me hold the invitation for a while, Tony thought I was hesitant. I smiled at him, why not go? If Daniel wants to spin the truth, I'll give him a big surprise. Finally, the day of the business summit arrived. I walked into the venue with Tony and got stopped by 3 figures. It was John and Daniel, and beside them was a weary Winter. John looked at me with disdain. So you're Tony's wife? A bankrupt company daughter's got no business setting foot in our house. Not backing down, I shot back. Who said I want to walk into your damned house? I've always stepped into my mom's house. Right after I said that, Tony nodded in agreement, that's right. John was so furious he almost lost his balance, but Daniel caught him just in time. Tony, don't get too cocky. No one's lucky forever. Hope you can still smile like that later. Tony and I ignored them and walked past. While Tony was busy talking business with other partners, I took the time to relax and grab some snacks. Sometime later, Winter sat beside me, holding a glass of champagne. Remembering the rumors about her recent miscarriage, I asked a waiter to bring her some milk. After all, Winter hadn't done anything to hurt me. As a fellow woman, I wanted to help her where I could. When Winter saw the milk, she shook her head quickly. Daniel said drinking milk at events like this will make me a laughingstock and embarrass him. I held her hand and assured her, Winter, no one is more important than yourself. She seemed stunned for a long moment and then broke down crying. Amy, thank you. I patted her shoulder. If you ever need help, you can come to me. I wouldn't actively help Winter since some things require standing up yourself, no matter how much help others give. Just then, Daniel took the stage, microphone in hand. He announced that in front of all the reporters, he would reveal a family secret. Someone in the crowd was a family illegitimate child. His mom was an affair partner who embezzled money from their family, and this illegitimate child's success was all due to their family's money. As soon as he finished, reporters rushed forward, asking who it was and whether Daniel had proof. Daniel smirked at Tony. Of course I do, everyone please look at the screen. Soon, the big screen started showing numerous photos. But the look in everyone's eyes turned strange, even John's face went pale before he collapsed. Daniel realized something was wrong, turned around, and saw photos of his mom as the other woman. There was even a picture of him at 5, kneeling with his mom before Tony and his mom, begging for forgiveness. In an instant, Daniel looked shocked, taking 2 steps back. Now, it was my turn to smile triumphantly. Knowing that Daniel had prepared fake photos, I got evidence from Tony's grandparents about John's affair. They had planned to keep it for emergencies, not expecting to use it this soon. Daniel met my gaze and knew it was me who did it. He fought through the crowd to come at me. So it was you damn woman ruined my plans, I'll get you for this. But before his fist reached me, Tony caught it. The next second, Tony twisted his wrist with force. Crack. Daniel's screams echoed throughout the venue. Tony punched him to the ground, then stomped on his chest, making Daniel scream louder. Good job on the villain's part. I'd long wanted to see the male lead get hit like this. People around should help, a group beating would work better now. After handling the situation, Tony quickly checked on me. Seeing that I wasn't hurt, he relaxed and looked at me with a complicated expression. Feeling guilty, I smiled, preparing to explain. Suddenly, Tony collapsed against me. I caught him and noticed the unusual flush on his face. Tony whispered, struggling, there was something in the wine. I knew Daniel had spiked Tony's drink. The earlier scuffle just hastened the drug's effect. Daniel was ruthless, not just wanting to ruin Tony's reputation but also pin a crime on him. Ignoring the ongoing chaos, I hurried Tony up to a hotel room upstairs. I tossed him onto the bed and started to undress him. Tony grabbed my hand. No, I might hurt you. I held his face and kissed him, silencing any protests. His sharp nose brushed my face, our breathing getting hotter. But I want you. With that phrase, Tony froze, the corners of his eyes turning red. He couldn't resist anymore, holding the back of my head, kissing me fiercely. Onlookers' comments. The villain and the female character are finally hitting it off. I waited ages for this moment, totally worth it. Why did it go black all of a sudden? We can only hear the voices. I knew the author wouldn't let us see it. Alright, be content, the villain's voice is so sultry, it gives me chills. In a daze, I heard him murmur, do you love me? Yes. Who am I? Tony. And with that, I was forced to repeatedly profess my love to Tony, tossed and turned like a pancake until morning. Finally understanding what viewers meant by being a lovesick puppy. Later, Tony confessed that he didn't want me to know about his family, worried I'd look down on him. I explained the truth about our breakup 4 years ago. The one responsible for Tony struggling to find a job, ending up doing manual labor, was my dad. My father was a self-serving man, implicitly causing my mother's death, wanting me to marry for business advantage. So, I had to break up with Tony and spent 4 years tearing the company apart. I never dared to tell Tony. I just didn't want him to know that I've turned into someone full of schemes, someone who could even hurt their own dad. I was scared he'd end up hating me or being guarded around me. After I said that, Tony kissed my shoulder and said, "Are you being silly?" I touched his abs and replied, "Not as silly as you." His eyes started to heat up, and his lips playfully brushed against my neck. "Babe, my shoulder hurts again. Can you give it a rub?" Of course, it didn't just stop at a simple shoulder rub. Comments: Okay, our villain finally got on the path of redemption. Before, the villain grabbed the female side character's hand like, "What are you doing?" Now it's all, "Babe, my shoulder hurts, help me out." Cracking me up, you know how to sum it up, commenter. While Tony and I were getting cozy, things were already chaotic outside. The rumor of Daniel, the group's general manager, being an illegitimate child caused the stock to plummet. John couldn't handle it and suffered a stroke, ending up in the hospital. While Daniel was dealing with all that, Winter hired a lawyer and took Daniel and his mistress to court. The Lou group completely went under, and Daniel was arrested by the police. As for me, after things stabilized between Tony and me, I started a jewelry brand with some friends. When we were hiring, I was surprised that Winter was the first to interview. Her qualifications and skills fit perfectly, so we brought her on board. Honestly, I had my own agenda too. Winter's the protagonist of this world, and in the original story, after some rough patches with Daniel, her luck seemed to skyrocket. With her on our side, my company's bound to thrive. Just thinking about my future success makes me smile in my sleep. Comments. Throwing confetti, finally, it's not just about women pitted against each other mindlessly. Who said women only compete? We actually admire and uplift one another more often. Both the villain and the side character are such sweethearts. You guys deserve to be truly happy. Extra. I want more stories. When's the author coming out with extras? I'll keep watching until you do.